Very good afternoon to all of you who are present here in this classes. Now, first of all, I like to thank my all beloved student and my colleague. Today, I like to deliver my topic of lecture, which are the part of our course curriculum, the structure and function of the female reproductive system. We know the female reproductive system are more complicated than the male reproductive system. It produces female gametes, female gamete, that is the ovum, female sex hormone, estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, and it also maintains the embryo and nourishing the baby by the mammary gland. And it have a female reproductive system with different parts. First are the primary reproductive organs, that is the ovaries, two ovaries that produce the ova, and accessory organ, that is the uterus and fallopian tubules, where transfer the ova and sperm, where the fertilization takes place. And accessory glands are also the vagina and external genitalia. All these are responsible for the receive the sperm from the female. Then we know that these are the part, that is the cervix. Major part of the female reproductive system are the cervix, vagina, ovaries, uterine tube, that is fallopian tube. We know the here the fertilization takes place, and then the uterus. Next. Now this is the holistic picture of the female reproductive system. The ovaries release one egg, and this is the fertilization is occurred. Then next ovary, cervix, and uterus, and these are the ovary and the oviduct. There are the two ovary, and next. This is the clear picture of the female reproductive system. There are the two ovaries, and this is the oviduct, and this is the uterus. It consists of three parts: endometrium, myometrium, and epimetrium. And the cervix, that is the barrier, that and then next in the vagina. Then next. Now the fallopian tube. Here the in fallopian tube, here the fertilization ovum comes from the ovary to the fallopian tube, and here the fertilization takes place, and after the fertilization zygote is formed. Now this zygote transform into the endometrium. Here the morula, bastula, gastrula, and ultimately the embryo is developed. Next, that is the uterus, the major body. It consists of the film outer coat of the muscle, that is the myometrium, and an inner lining of the vascular glandular material, that is the endometrium. The endometrium is thickness during the menstrual cycle and allow the implantation of the fertilized egg, and the pregnancy occurs when the fertilized egg are implanted successfully into the endometrium lining. And there are the two ovaries. The main function of the ovary are the produce the egg from the follicle, and produce the female hormone, that is the estrogen, progesterone, and relaxin. And estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, and estrogen produced from the Graafian follicle, that is the theca, external and internal cell, and progesterone mainly produced from the corpus luteum, and also sometimes produced from the placenta also. The fallopian tube, that is the oviduct, and connected to the uterus, and leave the close to the ovaries, lined with the cilia and surrounded by the circular muscle, and to propel the egg towards the uterus and to serve as a site for the fertilization. Only fallopian tube are the actual site where the fertilization takes place. In some cases, to serve as a site of fertilization. And the uterus, that is the, we know that it is called the womb, the thick wall and the muscular lining, and it is the pear-shaped and lined with a layer of called the endometrium, and site for the development of the embryo. We know that in embryo, the bhuna development and pregnancy is a 3 trimester, and it total duration of the pregnancy is 280 days. And now there is the cervix. Next part of the female reproductive system is the cervix, that entrance to the uterus and path for the sperm to the swim through, produce the mucins, and started from facilitate the sperm to swing, and also hold the baby in the uterus. And next in the vagina, that is the birth canal, and all these are the accessory organ of the female reproductive system, and birth canal, and receptacle for the male, and this is the and clitoris are the external sex organ. Then next. Now the female cycle, we know the female reproductive cycle, that is the menstrual cycle. We know the menstrual cycle is the crying of uterus for the baby, and there are the two things that happen. One is the ovarian cycle, and next one is the uterine cycle. It is the 28 days cycle, 28 plus minus 5 days cycle. It mainly controlled by the pituitary gonadotropin, that is the LH and FSH. LH and FSH are secreted from the anterior pituitary, makes two hormones that act on the ovaries, and FSH, that is the follicular stimulating hormone, stimulate the follicle to mature, cause it produce the estrogen, and LH, that is the luteinizing hormone that maintain the corpus luteum and causes it produce the progesterone. Corpus luteum is produced, we know the at 14 days that there is ovulation, and after the ovulation Graafian follicle, from the Graafian follicle ovum is released, and this portion is known as, and after the release of ovum, that is called the corpus luteum. These are the gonadotropin, that is the pituitary gonadotropic hormone. Nature of the hormone is the steroid hormone, that is the FSH and LH. They regulate both the ovarial production of the female sex hormone. Ovary makes two hormones that act on the endometrium, uterus lining. These are the estrogen made by the follicle. We know the estrogen not a single hormone, it is a group of hormone, estradiol, estrone, estradiol, and there is the progesterone and made by the corpus luteum. Next. Now female cycle, there are the two cycle. We know the ovarian cycle and menstrual cycle, that is the uterine cycle, and ovarian cycle, that is the 28-day cycle. There are the two phase, mainly follicular phase, and that is the next one is the luteal phase. Follicular phase, duration of the follicular phase is 1 to 14 days. Here the FSH regulate from the anterior pituitary, release from the anterior pituitary and stimulate the development of the follicle, that is the unfertilized egg, and follicle begins to secrete the estrogen, so that level of this hormone in steady increase. At the before the we know the for 14 days there is ovulation is started, and before the 48 hours before there is a peaks rise of the LH, that is called the LH surge. Now the 14 days the ovulation follicular release egg, a peak of LH from the anterior pituitary is stimulated with the help of the hormone, that is the luteinizing hormone. Then the luteal phase. Now follicle turn into the corpus luteum after the removal of the ovum from the Graafian follicle. The LH from the anterior pituitary stimulate the production of the progesterone. As the progesterone increases, anterior pituitary decreases, LH also. So corpus luteum to degenerate, and when the corpus luteum is gone, the menstruation is the occur. Next, this is the histological structure of the ovary. If we you know, these are the primordial follicle. There is the primary follicle contain primary oocytes, and follicle with the early antrum, and that is the these are the granulosa cell. These granulosa cell and theca cell are the responsible for the synthesis and secretion of the estrogen. There is the mature Graafian follicle. This from the mature follicle, and this one is the ovum, and there is a rupturation of the mature follicle at the day 14 days, and after the rupturation, these follicles are transformed into, where the ovum is ruptured from the follicle and transformed, developing into corpus luteum, and these corpus luteum and fully formed corpus luteum, and at the end of this menstrual cycle, this corpus luteum is transformed into the atreatic follicle there. Next, menstrual cycle, there earlier I will say that there are the two phases, that is the ovarian cycle and uterine cycle. We know that there the menstrual cycle is 28-day cycle. First day is the bleeding phase. It is started 1 to 5 days, and some cases there it extend from the any 2 days, and then 1 to 5 days the low level of estrogen and progesterone causes the thickening of the uterine lining to degenerate and set the menstruation period. Now then 6 to 13 days, that is the estrogen from the follicle, estrogen is released from the follicle and increases, which causes a thickening of the wall of the endometrium and extract the blood vessel and the gland. Then this is the 14 days, here the ovulation takes place, and then after the ovulation 15 to 28 days, that increased level of the progesterone causes the endometrium to thicken further and thick the mucus secretion, and endometrium is ready to receive the fertilized egg, that is the zygote. Next. Now this is a picture of the there are the two happens are noted, that is the ovarian and uterine changes and ovarian changes. These are the follicle, and these are follicular development is started, and at the age of 14 days there is a ovulation is takes place. Then after the ovulation the corpus luteum is formed, and these are the endometrium of the uterine. There is a flow of the that is the 1 to 5, that is the bleeding phase, and at every menstrual period there is, we know, the 40 cc of blood, unovulated ovum and mucus are shedded from this, and then these are the follicular phase. The 5 to 14 days are the follicular phase, and last is the luteal phase. And these, there are the two parallel, that is the ovarian cycle and luteal cycle, and this picture shows the two parallel events. Then next, now to the normality, egg is not the fertilized, therefore if the sperm is not come to the fallopian tube, so egg is not fertilized, and therefore corpus luteum begins to degenerate. Therefore progesterone is fall. Low progesterone and estrogen causes the endometrium to be shed, and menstrual cycle is beginning. Now if the pregnancy occurs, the zygote embedded in the thick endometrium and prevent the corpus luteum from the degeneration, and this keep up the progesterone level and prevent the endometrium and zygote from being the shed. Next. Now the female, these are the structure of the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system, earlier we said that now these are ovaries. These are mainly primary sex organ in female, that is the ovary, and produce the hormone estrogen, progesterone, and this is site for the ovulation, that egg cell, the development and the ovulation is takes place. Now the fallopian tube, or also oviduct that carry the ovum from the ovary to the uterus, and usually the site for the fertilization. Now the fimbriae, and the fimbriae is the sweep for the ovum into the oviduct and following ovulation, and uterus, we know it is the womb, and the pear-shaped organ in which the embryo and fetus develop and involved in the menstruation, that is the cervix. Now this cervix is separated from the ovary, separated the vaginal from the uterus, and it holds the fetus in place during the pregnancy and dilated at the time of the birth to allow the fetus to leave the uterus. And next, the vagina, that is the extended from the cervix to the external environment, and that provide the passage from where the sperm is entered into the next. Now this is the feedback mechanism. We know the this is the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, and how the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis are act. We know the hypothalamus, from the hypothalamus GnRH, that is the gonadotropin releasing hormone, are secreted. Now these GnRH or gonadotropin releasing hormone act on the anterior pituitary. This from the anterior pituitary, the LH and FSH are secreted. Now FSH stimulate and mature the growing follicle, and from the growing follicle estrogen is released. Now when the estrogen is released, the increased estrogen at mid cycle stimulate the LH secretion. Now this is the and this increase estrogen stimulate the anterior pituitary, and again happen. And next, the FSH, LH, which is also secreted from anterior pituitary, that acts on the growing follicle, and parallelly they act on the corpus luteum of the, and this all these happens are occurred in the ovary. Now this is the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the ovary. So this is known as the hypothalamus pituitary gonad. Gonad means hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. Next. Now the table showing the female cycle. The first day 1 to 5 days is the flow of the that is the menstruation phase, where the bleeding is takes place. Then is the follicular phase. The duration of the follicular phase is the 6 to 13 days, and where the follicles are developed in ovaries, and endometrium is restored and estrogen produced by the follicular cell. Then at the 14 days, that is ovulation is takes place. Oocyte burst from the ovary and 14 days, and after the 14 days, that is 15 to 20, that is the luteal phase. Corpus luteum forms and endometrium are thickened, and estrogen and progesterone level are increased. Then this is the structure. This pictorial form are showed that this is the pituitary. We know the pituitary is the master gland, and from the two parts, that is the pituitary adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis. Now from the anterior pituitary secretes the LH and FSH. Now this LH, this is the LH ovulation. There is a, before the LH ovulation, there is a LH search and at and 0 days there is a menstrual starting date is the 0 days. Then this is the menstrual bleeding. So the endometrium, there is endometrium thickening, lining are set out, and after that there is a proliferation of the endometrium. Now this ovulation, this is primordial follicle, and then second primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and mature Graafian follicle. Now there is ovulation takes place, and at the time of ovulation there is LH, sharp rise of LH, then LH fall down, and in this way the LH FSH how to combat this menstrual cycle. Next. Now in female reproductive system there is two parts. One is production of the female hormone and the gametogenesis. Gametogenesis, that is the gametogenesis in case of the male hormone, that is the one oogenesis. That is oogenesis is the formation of the ovum from the primitive germ cell, and this is the histological structure, and primordial follicle, primary follicle, and in every menstrual cycle 2 or 3 follicles are grown up, and ultimately one mature follicle are developed, and from the one mature follicle, if the sperm is come out to the female reproductive tract and then fertilize the ovum. And now this process is known as the oogenesis, and development and maturation of the oocyte or egg, it is called the oogenesis. Now this oogenesis takes place and in the embryonic state, where the primordial germ cell, and it from the primordial germ cell there is a mitotic division. From the primordial germ cell, the oogonium is developed. Now this there is a mitotic division, again mitotic division that produce the primary oocyte. From the primary oocytes, there is a completion of the meiosis, that is the onset of meiosis, and that fall one polar body, and secondary oocyte is developed. From the secondary oocyte, and there ovulation and sperm entry, then there is a fertilization that takes place, and completion of the meiotic tube, that is the second polar body, and this fertilization takes place. This is the oogenesis. From the oogenesis, the ovum is developed. Next. This is the female reproductive tract, and there are the different parts from and how the then ovulation release a secondary oocyte within the antrum of the oviduct. After oviduct, then the second oviduct, the fertilization occurs, a sperm enter into the oocyte, and meiosis of the oocyte is completed, and the nuclei of the oocyte and the sperm fuse, produce a zygote. And how the sperm is enter into the corona radiata, and then ultimately fertilize the ovum. And we know there is a head of the sperm, there is acrosin and hyaluronidase. All hyaluronidase acrosin is responsible for the capacitation of this reaction. Next, now cleavage, the cell division begins in the oviduct as the embryo is moved toward the uterus by peristalsis and the movement of by the cilia, and then the cleavage continue by the time of the embryo and reach the uterus, and it is the ball of cell and floated in the uterus for the several days, and nourishment by the endometrium or secretion it belongs to the blastocyst, and then the blastocyst implant in the endometrium about 7 days after the conception. Conception means the pregnancy. Next, there are the one.